Welcome, everyone. My name is Sherry Anderson, Optimization Specialist here at Rhinogram. During this podcast today, we will talk about how both dental and healthcare providers must adjust their mindset in this age of consumerism, where everyone expects instant gratification and wants answers now. Joining me today is Dr. George Soros. Dr. Soros has a successful orthodontic practice in North Olmsted and North Ridgeville, Ohio. Dr. Soros, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to share with us the how and why providers and team members must adopt to the way of thinking or be overshadowed by those who are.
Well, thank you, Sherry. I appreciate it, and it's a pleasure joining you today to kind of answer some questions that might be common questions people have as they're trying to integrate the rhinogram into their practice.
Well, thank you. And so, will you speak with to us on how we must prepare our minds for change and accept that our thought process might very well need to be adjusted?
Well, I think the big issue here is that we need to change our mindset and not the patient's mindset. Patients definitely that's what they want. Texting is what people love to do. They text each other, they text their family, they text their friends. So their mindset is already there. The problem is our mindset needs to change. And in a way, theirs does too, but mostly ours. We need to understand that the best form of communication, the form of communication that people desire, the form of communication that people would love to be communicating with us is texting. The problem is we're so attuned to dealing with our patients through the phone, and people themselves are also so used to calling their health professionals, and we're used to accepting the calls and dealing with it through the phone and playing phone tag. And this is what the culture has been. So I think their mindset is already on texting, but they're thinking ours isn't. And therefore, if we change our mindset to texting, believe me, they will adapt and want to join us because this is what they want. We just assume they don't because they've always called our office and dealt with it through the phone.
So, what I'm hearing is people are actually there and they're just waiting on their providers to provide that service for them.
Absolutely. And that's why the response we get in our office about the rhinogram is overwhelmingly positive, and people are just ecstatic about the fact that this is how we communicate.
Was it personally difficult for you to adjust your thought process? And what was the pivotal moment that you said, I really need to modernize my communication here at my practice?
Now, that's a great question, Sherry, and it's an easy answer and it's a short one. You'd think it'd be a long answer, but um, I'm not the first to. I love technology in any form and fashion, whether it be communication, treatment, whatever I need for my office. But I'm not always the first to embrace it and jump on board because I wanted to kind of develop a little bit, and I don't want to kind of be the guinea pig that adapts something new. But I'll tell you, when I saw the rhinogram, and it was what the pivotal point for me was the article written by Dr. Dressler about rhinogram, which was years ago. And I read that article and I didn't even want to talk about it. I jumped and called you guys immediately and jumped right on board because I thought this is a game changer. There's really been three things in my practice that have revolutionized my practice. And I can name all three. One was Invisalign, which happened a long time ago. The second one was becoming completely digital, 3D technology, 3D printing. I'm the only one in the area that does that. And the third one was Rhinogram. That also revolutionized my practice. So when I read that article by Dr. Dressler, there was no hesitation on my part to realize that this is the future. This is where we need to go.
And I realize when change is on the horizon at a practice, many doctors and office managers really dread informing the team because many team members, they automatically believe if something changes in a practice, that means more work for them. And I'd like for you to talk to us a little bit about that. And then I would also like you to talk about what approach you've taken with your team as you modernize communication at your practice. And is it important that teams understand why? So that's a threefold question there for you.
Excellent. So the first thing is the team members, they really do dread change sometimes, but I think part of it's a culture. In my practice, they've always understood that the culture is that when Dr. Soros sees something that's going to improve and modernize us and help us by efficiency and improving our practice and our treatment, we will adapt it. So part of it's a culture. It's kind of hard to change a culture. I know I've talked with you guys on occasions where practices are kind of struggling making the change. Well, they've always struggled with change. So part of it is you got to kind of embrace the culture in your practice that change is good. and change brings efficiency. Not only efficiency, it brings production because you're modernizing your practice, and this is what people want. So basically, the what I told my staff is this change, although we're going to have to put some effort to make it, is well worth it because it will make your ability to communicate with patients more efficient and way less stressful than playing phone tag with them. So, when they heard more efficient, less stressful, quicker resolution of anything we wanted to deal with through our practice, they were immediately on board. But again, I think part of it's that culture. If it's always been hard to implement change in your practice, this probably won't be as easy to do either. So I think people have to realize to create a culture in their practice where they tell their staff, hey, we need to adapt changes and move forward with the world the way, the technology and the way the world's moving forward. We need to join that because if you get left behind, other people will move forward and you'll be left behind with everybody else. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, very much so. They feel like too that that's going to be additional work for them. How do you address that?
Again, it's like anything else, even if you're talking about an athlete or anybody else, hard work pays off in the end. So I told them the work we have to do to implement this change is going to well pay off in the efficiency and the time savings. One of the things I stress is here's the things that are going to happen to you if we implement this. Number one, you're going to have in the reception area, especially massive time savings. I think we've saved 4 to 5 hours a day in playing phone tag and using phone communication to deal with our patients. Most of our return calls and handling of our patients are done before lunch, and that was never the case. And actually, in the past, I've actually had staff who needed to stay an hour, hour and a half at the end of the day to catch up on phone calls and handle things that couldn't be handled during the course of the day. So the second thing I stress is stress reduction. Playing phone tag, the phone's ringing all day, transferring calls, very stressful. Stressful to the back staff, stressful to the reception staff. So the calm environment created through Trexing is wonderful too. There's not a constant phone ringing, constant dealing with phones and putting on hold and transferring calls. In our office, the stress level has dropped drastically just by the fact that we are not dealing with the phone all day long. And of course,
So you have less sticky notes and knocking on your door.
oh, absolutely. It's just the environment is really calmer. And what's funny is what I didn't expect, Sherry, was the calmness in the back. It transfers to the back because that stress level is kind of contagious. If it's kind of hairy in the front and the hair standing on end, it kind of carries over to the back. Now the back area is like, my gosh, Dr. Shore, since we've switched to texting, feels a little more relaxed, a lot more relaxed in the back here. And we wouldn't have thought that because it's really not us, it's helping. Well, it is helping them too because it's creating an environment that's just calmer, more efficient, and more relaxing. So, and on top of that, the big one here for me was multitasking. That is probably the number one thing that my reception staff told me was an improvement once we went to texting. You can handle multiple things at a very low stress level because meanwhile you're texting somebody back waiting for an answer, you're maybe on hold. I've watched my staff be on hold to get insurance information, which can be very frustrating. I've watched them be on hold for 5 minutes trying to gather insurance information. Meanwhile, they've handled 6 texts in that 5 minutes. Now, when
That's
you're on hold with the phone, your phone is tied up. You cannot deal with anybody. So the multitasking ability, doing multiple jobs, dealing with patients while you're on hold for insurance companies, it was amazing how many things can be accomplished when your form of communication with patients is texting.
Well, talk to me a little bit about your inner office communication, and it's secure and compliant, correct? So that's helped a lot, with your staff as well in communication with one another.
Oh, absolutely. We weren't using that much in the beginning, but as we decided to kind of go down that road, I'm a smaller office, so oftentimes I would just come up to the reception area and look at photos, selfies that were sent by the patients about problems they might be having, and I would just kind of glance at them as in passing. But I thought, let's try and use this inter-office communication. So we started to use it, and we love it. Basically, as they get selfies and things that are clinical, they will transfer those over to me. I will look at them, make my decisions, put notes, attach it back, and transfer that text back over to them. And then they will communicate with the patient. So it's been wonderful. That was a wonderful surprise for us because we decided to kind of implement that a little later than just the texting. And it's been a great addition. It's really increased the efficiency because of the fact that I can just deal with these things when I'm in my office, and I don't have to stop at the desk and deal with it.
Well, how has adopting that patient first mentality changed the way you practice today? I know as a provider, you want an efficient office, you want a compliant office. It's so refreshing to hear providers like you talk and speak to your team. and hear that really it's all about your patient, putting them first.
Right. And this is where you were talking about, moving forward, and we were talking about implementing changes and changing the mentality. You will be left behind if you do not adapt this form of communication, because people know what they want. And what people want is speed, ease, minimal effort, and efficiency. This is what they want. And texting provides all of those things. Example, there was a patient once and I was laughing. She was in the grocery store shopping. Meanwhile, she's texting and communicating with my staff to schedule her appointment. And she was just in awe that she was shopping, grocery shopping, and scheduling her appointment and thinking, how efficient is this? I don't have to worry about calling them later. So people want speed. They want efficiency. They want minimal effort. They don't want to put too much effort into anything they do. They want it all quick, efficient, and fast. Well, guess what? Texting provides that. So if you don't accommodate them as a practitioner and somebody else does, they will find that person. Does that make sense to you?
It does. I mean, they don't stay on those websites very long. They don't, there was a time where I thought people would really, if they took their family or their child to one provider, they would stay there for life. But now there's a little bit more shopping around, and a lot of that's due to accessibility to the provider and convenience as well. I've seen personally that people demand that instant gratification and they want their answers right now. I mean, look at Publix grocery pickup, Walmart, Uber. All these businesses are changing their mindset to accommodate people with that instant gratification. I mean, when you even think about a teacher that's in a classroom, maybe an assembly line worker, they have the right to have treatment at Source Orthodontics as well. Or really, honestly, they can't leave the classroom. They can't leave their job to make that private phone call. And before you know it, it's at the end of the day. So, how do you, as a provider, address those needs and meet expectations so that you can acquire those new patients and provide that convenience for current patients? I know that's been at the top of your mind.
In a point, it's evolved, but now we've pretty much perfected it. And actually, the one-step consultation is what I've mastered, and it's taken a little bit of time, but we've mastered it to where it's amazing. We even have Rhinogram templates that we send in a certain order, and the goal there is to communicate enough information through texting that the patient wants to stay, do their examination, stay, do their pictures, x-rays, and scan, and all their records, and begin treatment at the next visit. And we have increased that ability probably by 80 to 90% by using texting. So basically, when we first communicate them, it's usually through the phone. I'll be honest with you, because people don't know they can text me yet. So when they're referred by a patient, oftentimes they'll call me, look me up on the internet. If they're referred by a doctor, they'll definitely call me. Although, to my surprise, last week, some doctor referred somebody and told them to text me, which totally caught me off guard. Normally, people will communicate initially with me through phone call just because they don't know the ability to text is there. Once we get them in our phone call on the phone, it's actually, even if they communicate us through texting, it's actually easier to get an initial phone call in, because there's a massive amount of information that you have to get into the computer, and it's really hard to do through texting. So there always has to be an initial phone communication with our new patients to get all the information in there and get them in there. Of course, and this is a process. The first thing we do is, once we get their information in the computer, say, now let's sign you up for our Rhinogram texting. And they love it. They say, okay, let's do that. Once they're signed up with the texting, an initial text goes out talking about HIPAA and talking about how welcome to Braces by Saurus. We will be texting you shortly with all your insurance information once we find out what that is. So text number 2, which happens later that day, is a breakdown of their fee with their insurance coverage. And in that text, we also suggest to them that if they would like, they can basically stay, do their pictures, x-rays, scan, and save themselves a whole office visit to begin treatment. And in that same text, we'll also offer our financial options. So basically, we are now offering them what they want to hear. What they want to hear is, what is it going to cost? How can I pay for it? And what are you going to do for my child? So basically, we get that all accomplished in 2 texts. And you'd be surprised at how many people text back and say, that sounds great. Now that I know everything, I think I will just save myself a visit to the office. Now tell me that that's not efficiency and that's not what people want.
Well, what would you say to those providers and those skeptics that say, well, I don't want to lower my standard of treatment?
Well, you're not lowering your standard of treatment. What you're
Mhm.
doing is you're attracting more people to your practice by giving them the form of communication and the efficiency and the ease that they're looking for. In other words, this isn't really about treatment, it's about getting people in your office and getting them to start. Now, I hate to say this, and I said it in my webinar, we are salespeople. I don't care if you think that that's unprofessional from the standpoint of being a practitioner, but we are salespeople. You are trying to sell your practice, your treatment, you're trying to sell your office to these people. Now, the faster you can do that, and the more you can impress them, the less likely they're going to do what you were saying, Sherry, which is go down, check a few more websites, go on the internet, ask around. See, they know based on my reputation what they're going to get. And when they see how we treat them and how we handle them, they really are ready to say, let's just get this going. I'm done looking. Let's move forward. Does that make sense?
Oh yes, and of course you're seeing these referring dentists and doctors say text Dr. Soros as well. And have you seen? And what I'm hearing around the country from other providers, they're beginning to see people sharing contacts. In other words, maybe someone asked me, Sherry, who did your teeth? They're gorgeous, and I would say Dr. Soros. Let me share his contact information with you through my phone. And then I'm seeing a lot of that as well, shared contacts, which is fantastic as well. So they don't even take the time to write somebody's name and number down. They're just sharing their contact in their phone.
Absolutely. And what makes to me right what makes Rhinogram the best is that that same number is being used, and that intrigues people. Like, so you're telling me that the same number I would call you, I text you, and I said, tell them, yeah. I'm like, wow, that's really neat. So the point is, it's again a form of convenience. If you have to look up a separate number to text, it's kind of a little bit annoying to people. Does that make sense? In other words, the fact that it's one number, text, take care of it, call, everything's on one number, that intrigues people as well when they first find out they can text me because they're immediately ready to have to put another number in there and deal with another number. Remember which number is the texting number, which number is the phone call number. But they say, hey, that's great, just the same number, and we just text you. So, I mean, I hate to say it, but the texting has made us actually kind of a relationship with our patients is better, I think, because there's no upset patients. Oftentimes when they play phone tag with you, they get upset. They want to be dealt with. The culture with texting is different than a phone. With the culture of texting is that when you text somebody, you are waiting for their text back, and nobody gets really upset or uptight or hurry up. I want to talk to you. It's weird. It's different. With the phone, oftentimes they would call you, you would call them. Now they're starting to get irritated. With the text, we notice if it takes 20 minutes, 30, six, an hour, people patiently wait for their text, and you patiently wait for them to respond to your text. So there's not many patients that are getting uptight or irritated with the communication issue because you're right. You make a phone call, you can't get through. Well, how are you going to get a chance to make another phone call? Isn't that frustrating? Yes, it is. But it's easy to make another text, though, isn't it?
80% of people would rather text with their healthcare provider than to speak with them on the phone. And another statistic is 98% of text messages are open versus 20% email.
And that leads us back to what we said in the beginning, Sherry, doesn't it? We need to change our mindset. The public's mindset's already there. They want to be texted. So the mindset that needs to change is the office's mindset. And you need to convince people that basically we now text, we don't phone call because we are creatures of habit. So what happens oftentimes, we have a few people who they kind of just kept forgetting and they text once, call once, text once, call once. But if you adapt texting as your number one form of communication you're practicing, you stress that, people will all eventually come that way. But there are times when people call us and text us because they feel like they got to pick that phone up. But if you build that culture in your practice, ultimately everybody now in our practice, probably 98% of people understand we don't call stores anymore, we text it. Does that make sense? So it's a smooth change, but people themselves, even though they want to text, find it awkward to say, I'm texting my doctor. That's kind of awkward. But they eventually will adapt. All our patients eventually said, hey, this is the way we communicate.
Well, I know that I have actually spoke with customer success here at Rhinogram, and they've actually seen when they have implemented provisioned practices, landline phone numbers to be text enabled, they already have text messages in there. So people are assuming, the public is assuming that they can already text their healthcare provider. So the provider is actually missing out on valuable opportunities for new patients and questions from their current patients as well.
Absolutely. And along those lines, the communication is also better and more efficient because I noticed that problems are solved much more easily with texting versus phone call, because that phone tag, you might not actually get the person to deal with the situation. Whereas the minute a situation arises in our office, my staff immediately text about it, and then they text back, and then we solve it much quicker. So there's an efficiency level of solving situations that's much, much better with texting, because of the fact that they will, like you said, 98% are open, they respond, you respond. Meanwhile, a whole day could go by and you have not even gotten that person on the phone to deal with whatever you're trying to solve.
Well, so Dr. Soros, there's many orthodontists out there that can straighten teeth. Your cases, and I've seen them. Look at those pictures if everyone wants to take a look at Dr. Soros's website. But you have certainly set the bar high. But it seems to me that in your mind, you knew it was going to take more than a great reputation to acquire new patients, increase your revenue, and set your practice apart from other providers and those DIYs in your area. How has the general public responded to your progressive methods of communication?
Well, and I say this with true passion. The things I've adapted in the last few years have made me stand out like a sore thumb. There's no doubt about it. The first one was the digital technology, the fact that we scan and we do not take impressions. We haven't taken impressions in 3 years, and we have 3D printers in our practice, along with the fact that now people are saying, oh my gosh, we can communicate with Source through texting and we can get everything resolved before we even show up at his door, has made me really set me apart a lot from the people around me, whether it be the general practitioners or the orthodontist. Again, I'm moving forward and everybody else is getting left behind. And again, it will happen to where I agree with you that down the road, texting will be the major form of communication for professionals. You see a lot of the medical starting to turn that way too.
I feel like that you're really building relationships as well. It's a personal relationship that your patients have with you when they feel like that they can text Dr. Soros like they're family and friends. Maybe I can text, the financial planner when it's convenient for me or from the comfort of my home. So you're really building relationships there in your community as well.
Absolutely. And I think that's the most important thing is I really feel that it's kind of like a home feeling when you start texting with your patients. They feel more relaxed and calmer as opposed to, oh gosh, I got to pick up the phone, call my doctor, deal with that. They're like, well, I was thinking about this. Why don't I just text them and see what they think? And and kind of like you do with your friends, you're right. So yes, it does create that home friend feeling. And again, the efficiency and the speed with which you can handle things is really what sets it apart more than anything. Is yeah, you get that home field, but that you can just deal with so many problems so quickly and so efficiently. I mean, one of the best compliments we've ever gotten since we started texting is, people, one patient comes and says, oh my God, Dr. Schwartz, the way you're doing this now, you're running like a well-oiled machine. I thought that was quite the compliment, because they're pretty much, this is what people want. Remember, they want speed, efficiency. They want everything done now, and I want it done quickly, and I want it done smoothly. And when they made that compliment to me, I was like, wow, this is fantastic. This is what I had hoped for.
For those patients, they can actually reference their phone. Some of those patients who may have had a lot of questions, you text them back, maybe a link to care instructions and so forth. They can go back and reference that rather than call again over and over and speak. Not that you would mind that, but they do have that reference. And on your side as a practice, you can actually refer back to those conversations because that is a non-editable, non-deletable thread of conversation. Isn't that right?
Yes, absolutely. And I have a new receptionist up there, and I kind of stressed that to her because she kind of had that feeling it goes away. I'm like, no, 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 nothing goes away here. It's all there. So you can always go back and refer to that conversation at any time, the complete conversation. It's all there. And that's why I told them, don't worry when one of you picks up where one of you left off, because you just go back and update yourself to where the current situation is and pick up from there. So yeah, that's initially she was thinking that stuff went away. I'm like, no, nothing goes away. It all stays there for reference at all times. So
You and your awesome team they've stepped out of the box of traditional means of communication. And what you've done is you've actually provisioned your landline number to be textable. Now, your Facebook Messenger is actually routed into a Rhinogram secure inbox. And providers can also have a website communication form in which their own staff can have a conversation with visitors without them having to download an app or sign into a portal. And you are providing the preferred means of communication that people demand today and they expect it. Please share with us some of the results you're experiencing by simply adjusting your mindset.
I'm going to tell you, Sherry, there's three. These are the three biggest changes that have happened in my practice since implementing Rhinogram. The number one, and by far the most important to any practitioner, is the one-step consultation. It increases production and it increases your start rate drastically. So I've been able to start more people more quickly through using texting than ever before. And that is definitely something that doctors should be interested in. More production and faster. The second one is the efficient, low stress communication. Like I said, the stress level now is much lower. People don't get upset about lack of communication. And more importantly, all those things that you need to handle, most of them can be handled before lunch. And like I said before, my staff would stay hour and a half at the end of the night trying to catch up on phone calls. So that's the number two thing, is efficient, low stress communication, and most things handled very quickly and nothing left behind before you leave the day. And the last one, which has been really huge also, is avoiding unnecessary visits. This one is really big. Basically, we stress to people, if there's anything wrong or you have a question, use a selfie. Take a picture of what it is you're talking about. And I'll be honest with you, people have gotten pretty creative. I'm entertained now. They have some fancier phones or whatever. They're circling areas and sending them to me. So they're circling them with their pen on their computers or however they're doing it on their iPads. So we're actually getting not only selfies, but selfies with arrows pointing at things, circled areas. It's kind of entertaining. But the point is they're using these selfies. And I'm going to tell you, we were checking the statistics. I'm probably saving 15 to 20 unnecessary visits a month by handling things through selfies and texting.
So what I'm hearing is patient acquisition, staff efficiency, retention, reputation management. So that's just fantastic, Dr. Soros. I would certainly like to thank you for sharing all of this valuable information today. That does conclude our topic today on mindset tune-up. Now, during the next podcast, Dr. Soros and I will be discussing the patient-first approach. Now, if you have any questions or would like to suggest a topic, you may email me, Sherry, Sherrie, at rhinogram.com. Thank you so much, Dr. Soros.
Thank you, Sherry. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to the future podcasts.